Caleb Hartman believed that life owed him applause. At 32, he was a man who carried his wealth on his sleeve. He drove a glossy Cadillac Escalade that seemed to roar louder than other cars, wore tailored suits with his initials stitched into the cuffs, and boasted about deals closed over expensive bourbon at country clubs. People in his town of Fairview admired him or envied him, depending on how close they stood. Caleb liked it that way. Respect was his oxygen, and attention was his daily bread. But in the middle of all the shining cars and grand gestures, there was a shadow that never left him. His first wife, Lena, had not given him a child. For 7 years, their marriage produced only silence in the nursery he once decorated with stuffed animals and painted in pastel blues. To Caleb, that silence became unbearable. Lena was nothing like Caleb. She had grown up on the quiet side of town, the daughter of a church organist and a school librarian. She was gentle, soft-spoken, and her beauty was not loud but steady, the kind that grew deeper when she smiled. Lena married Caleb when he was not yet rich. She had worked nights to help him through his first business failures, cooking dinners out of canned beans and smiling even when bills piled high. But Caleb's success hardened him. What was once gratitude turned to pride and then to bitterness. Every month that Lena came back from the doctor with no news of pregnancy, his temper grew. His mother called constantly, scolding him for staying with a woman who, in her words, had given him nothing. His friends made jokes that scraped against his pride like sandpaper. Caleb started to believe them. One late autumn night, with the air outside sharp as knives, the storm inside their marriage broke open. Caleb came home late, his tie undone, his face heavy with frustration. He tossed his keys onto the marble counter with a clatter that echoed through the silent house. Lena was sitting on the edge of their bed, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes already wet as if she had been waiting for the blow. 7 years, Caleb thundered, his voice thick with anger. 7 years of waiting, of excuses, of wasted time. Do you want me to die with no son to carry my name? Lena lifted her gaze, her voice trembling but steady enough to meet his. Caleb, we have tried. I have prayed until my knees were raw. Maybe it is not me. Maybe you should see a doctor as well. He laughed, sharp and cruel. Me? You dare suggest it is me? You are the barren one. You have made me a laughingstock. My mother was right all along. Her tears spilled freely. We vowed before God, Caleb, for better or worse. Why are you treating me like I am nothing? Because you are nothing without children, he shouted. You eat my food, wear my clothes, and sleep in my house, yet you have not given me one child. You are a curse, Lena. Her hands shook against her knees. Do not call me a curse. I am broken enough. Caleb turned away as if her presence disgusted him. Enough. Tomorrow I will call my lawyer. This marriage is over. The words cracked through the room like gunfire. Lena fell to the floor, clutching his pant leg, her cries filling the silence. Caleb pulled away as though her touch burned. He picked up his phone, dialed his attorney in front of her, and ordered divorce papers. Lena packed that night. She took nothing but a single suitcase and the strength left in her trembling body. As she stepped into the cold night, she whispered to herself, I may be leaving with nothing, but I will not remain broken. God will fight for me. For weeks, Lena slept on the couch of her college friend, Rachel. The small apartment smelled of coffee and fresh laundry, and Rachel's warm arms were the only anchor holding Lena together. Rachel pressed her to see a doctor. Reluctantly, Lena agreed. The doctor's words stunned her like a slap. Your body is healthy, Lena. There is no reason you cannot have children. Her chest tightened. Her heart broke open, and then anger began to rise. Caleb had never been tested. He had simply believed the problem was her, and he had built his cruelty on that belief. Rachel squeezed her hand. You see? He was wrong. You are whole. But Lena did not feel whole. Not yet. Months passed. Slowly, she began to heal. She found work at a bakery on Main Street, her hands learning the rhythm of kneading dough at dawn, her face warming to the smiles of customers who loved her pies. Rachel teased her, saying she should start her own food stand. Lena laughed it off, but the idea planted itself like a seed. Meanwhile, Caleb's life only grew louder. 3 years passed, and still he had no child. He dated women who sparkled in photographs, but none stayed. His mother's tongue remained sharp. "You threw away a faithful woman, Caleb. Look where it brought you." He ignored her. He built his empire larger, richer, gaudier. And then he met Clarissa Monroe, a fashion designer from New York who dazzled crowds with her gowns and social media presence. She was bold, confident, and the kind of woman who drew attention in any room. Within months, Caleb decided she would be his redemption. He proposed with a diamond the size of a marble and planned the biggest wedding Fairview had ever seen. Red carpets, celebrity singers, imported flowers. Every headline called it the wedding of the year. But Caleb had one more detail. He demanded his wedding planner send an invitation to Lena, a front row seat. His friends asked why. He only smiled. Let her come. Let her see what she lost. Far across town, Lena received the gold-trimmed envelope while feeding dough into the bakery oven. Her name was printed clearly on the card. Rachel fumed with rage. How dare he? This is an insult. But Lena only smiled softly. Perhaps this is not an insult. Perhaps this is the moment. Rachel narrowed her eyes. You are not thinking of going, are you? Lena looked at the envelope, then at the quiet strength she had found inside herself over the past years. She thought of the doctor's words, of the prayers she whispered in the dark, of the peace she had begun to feel. Her lips curved into a calm smile. I will go, she said, and I will not go alone. The morning light in Fairview fell softly across the display window of Lena's bakery. The glass reflected rows of golden pies and warm loaves, the sweet scent of cinnamon rolls curling into the street. Children pressed their noses to the window on their way to school, and workers stopped for coffee before rushing to the office. It had become a place of comfort, not only for the town, but for Lena herself. Her life was quiet but steady now. She rose before dawn, tied her apron, and poured herself into the work of baking. The steady rhythm of kneading and shaping dough calmed the echoes of her past. She no longer cried at night. She no longer stared into the distance, asking God why. Yet when she received Caleb's wedding invitation, old wounds stirred. Rachel, her friend and housemate, waved the invitation around as if it were poison. He is mocking you, Lena. He wants to see you broken. Lena wiped flour from her hands and stared out the bakery window. Children laughed as they passed, their backpacks bouncing. Her gaze lingered on them before she turned back. Maybe he wants that, she admitted. But maybe I want something too. Rachel crossed her arms. And what could you possibly want from that circus? To show myself that I survived, that I am not the woman he left on the floor. Rachel sighed, shaking her head. You plan to walk in there with your apron and your pie crusts? That is not how you fight a man like Caleb. Lena smiled faintly. I do not need to fight him. I only need to stand. Still, Rachel refused to let her go unprepared. Over the next few weeks, she pushed Lena to renew herself. She took her shopping for a gown, insisting on soft yellow silk that glowed against Lena's skin. She booked a stylist from a nearby town to shape Lena's hair and teach her how to apply makeup with quiet elegance. Rachel even contacted a friend who owned a black Lincoln limousine, arranging for Lena to arrive with dignity. Meanwhile, life at the bakery took an unexpected turn. One crisp afternoon, a man stepped inside carrying a leather satchel. He wore a simple button-down shirt, his sleeves rolled, his smile calm. His name was Daniel Price, a lawyer whose office was 2 blocks away. He ordered a slice of pecan pie, then another, and finally asked if Lena ever sold whole pies. "Only on Fridays," she replied, dusting flour from her hands. "Then I will be here every Friday," he said, and something in his eyes lingered. Daniel kept his word. Each week he returned, not only for pies but also for small conversations. He asked about her recipes, about her childhood in a quiet corner of Ohio, about her dreams before life turned sideways. He never pushed, never lingered too long, but each time he left, Lena found herself smiling in a way she had not smiled in years. Rachel noticed first. "That lawyer is looking at you like you are the only woman in town," she teased. Lena brushed it off, but her cheeks warmed. "He is just a customer." "Perhaps, but a customer who does not miss a Friday." Still, Lena's heart was cautious. She remembered too clearly the night Caleb called her a curse. She remembered the humiliation of being cast aside. She feared opening the door to anyone new. Yet Daniel's kindness chipped at her walls, brick by brick. One evening, after closing the bakery, Lena found Daniel waiting outside with 2 coffees. "You work too hard," he said, handing her one. She accepted it, surprised at how natural it felt to stand beside him watching the sun set over Fairview. "Do you ever rest?" he asked. "When I can. Work keeps my mind busy." He nodded. "I understand. My wife passed away years ago. Work kept me breathing when grief wanted to crush me." Lena glanced at him, startled by his honesty. "I am sorry." "Do not be," he said gently. "It taught me that pain does not last forever. You learn to live again." They stood in silence, sipping coffee as the sky burned orange. For the first time, Lena felt the possibility of something new. But the wedding loomed closer. Social media buzzed with photos of Clarissa Monroe's bridal shower at a beach resort, her diamond ring sparkling under flashing cameras. Headlines called it the union of power and beauty. Caleb was everywhere, smiling, boasting, performing for the world. And Lena knew her presence at that wedding would not go unnoticed. Rachel pressed her again. "You truly mean to walk into that hall?" "Yes," Lena said simply. "Not for him. For me." Rachel threw her hands up. "Then we will do it properly. You will not walk in like a ghost from his past. You will walk in like a queen." The night before the wedding, Lena could not sleep. She sat at the small kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Memories circled her like shadows. Caleb's voice calling her barren. The phone call to his lawyer, the way he turned his back as she begged for mercy. For years, she had carried those words like chains. But tomorrow, she would break them. Rachel joined her wearing pajamas and holding a blanket. "Nervous?" "A little." Rachel sat across from her. "You know, when you step into that hall, you will not just be showing Caleb who you are. You will be showing yourself." Lena nodded slowly. "That is the only reason I am going." Morning came bright and crisp. The yellow gown hung on the closet door, glowing in the sunlight. Rachel helped with her hair, brushed soft curls across her shoulders, and applied makeup that highlighted her calm eyes. When Lena looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. Not broken, not forgotten. Strong. The black Lincoln limousine waited outside, polished to a shine. Rachel fussed over every detail, smoothing the gown, checking the jewelry, making sure the invitation card rested in Lena's clutch. As Lena stepped into the car, her heart raced. She was not going to cause a scene. She was not going to fight. She was going to sit quietly, to let her presence speak louder than any words. Across town, Caleb adjusted his gold cufflinks in a mirror that stretched from floor to ceiling. Clarissa twirled in her sparkling gown, her bridesmaids laughing around her. The cameras flashed as they prepared to leave the hotel. To the world, it was a day of triumph. To Caleb, it was a chance to prove he had won. He did not know that the woman he once called barren was already on her way, calm as dawn, ready to take her seat in the front row. The wedding hall glimmered like a palace. Chandeliers spilled light over rows of golden chairs, roses bloomed along every aisle, and a live jazz band tuned their instruments near the stage. Outside, luxury cars lined the red carpet while photographers jostled for the best shots. Guests arrived in tailored suits and glittering gowns, eager to be part of what the papers had already called the event of the year. Caleb stood at the altar, wearing a white tailored suit embroidered in gold thread. He smiled broadly, shaking hands with politicians, business partners, and old friends. But beneath his smile, his nerves danced. He kept glancing toward the doors, waiting for one particular guest. Beside him, his best man Martin leaned close. "Why are you restless? This is your big day." Caleb adjusted his cufflinks. "I am waiting for someone." Martin frowned. "Who?" Caleb's eyes flickered. "You will see." Meanwhile, Lena's limousine rolled slowly toward the venue. Inside, she sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her yellow gown glowing in the morning light. Rachel sat beside her, whispering instructions. "Walk slow. Keep your chin up. Do not look away when people stare." Lena smiled faintly. "I am not here for them." Rachel studied her friend's calm face. Still, "You will steal the whole show." The limousine stopped at the entrance. A hush rippled through the crowd as the driver stepped out and opened the door. Cameras turned, lenses clicking furiously. When Lena emerged, holding Rachel's arm, the murmurs began. "Is that her?" whispered a woman in sequins. "Is that Caleb's ex-wife?" "She looks radiant," a man muttered, his phone already raised to record. Lena walked with quiet dignity. Her gown flowed like sunlight, her hair catching the light. She did not flinch under the stares or the whispers. Rachel squeezed her hand, guiding her past the flashing cameras and into the hall. Inside, the music paused. Conversations faltered. Guests turned in their seats. Caleb froze at the altar, his eyes widening as he saw her. He had expected a shadow of the woman he once cast aside, broken and bitter. Instead, Lena looked like strength itself, calm and unshaken. Martin whispered sharply, "Caleb, is that Lena?" Caleb's throat went dry. "Yes. And she looks happy." Caleb did not answer. His chest tightened as Lena moved down the aisle, every step measured, every glance steady. She reached the front row, the very seat Caleb had reserved for her, and sat down with quiet grace. Rachel sat beside her, chin lifted defiantly. Caleb forced himself to look away as Clarissa entered. She was stunning in her sparkling gown, her veil flowing like a river behind her. The crowd gasped with admiration. Clarissa smiled, waving slightly to the cameras before turning her eyes toward Caleb. But when she reached the altar, she noticed his frozen expression. She followed his gaze, and her smile faltered. "Who is that?" she whispered. Caleb swallowed. "My ex-wife." Clarissa's eyes narrowed. "And what is she doing here?" Caleb forced a smile, his voice low. "I invited her." "You invited your ex-wife to our wedding?" Clarissa's voice sharpened, though she kept her lips curved for the crowd. "I wanted her to see," Caleb said. Clarissa studied him for a long moment, then glanced back at Lena. Something in her eyes darkened. The ceremony began. The pastor's voice rose, reading from the book of Ruth about love and loyalty. Guests listened politely, but their attention kept drifting toward the front row where Lena sat like a quiet storm. Her presence shifted the air, turning whispers into a low hum that spread across the hall. As the vows began, Clarissa's voice wavered. She glanced at Lena again, then at Caleb. "You told me she could not have children," she whispered under her breath. Caleb's jaw clenched. "That is true." Clarissa's eyes lingered on Lena's steady face. "Are you sure?" Caleb hesitated, and in that pause, Clarissa saw everything she needed to see. The pastor asked if anyone objected to the union. Silence should have followed. Instead, a murmur rose like wind through tall grass. Some guests whispered loudly enough for Clarissa to hear. "She looks different. Did you hear she started her own bakery? She seems stronger now. Maybe she was never the problem." Clarissa's grip on her bouquet tightened. She turned her face back to Caleb. "You lied to me, did you not?" His eyes darted. "Lower your voice." "No," she said firmly. "You told me she was barren." "You told me that was why you divorced her," Caleb whispered harshly. "It is what I believed." Clarissa's voice sharpened. "You believed, but you never knew. You never even tested yourself, did you?" Caleb's silence was an answer louder than words. Clarissa stepped back from the altar, her chest heaving beneath her gown. The cameras turned toward her, capturing the moment. She shook her head, her voice carrying across the hall. "I will not marry a man who lies to cover his pride." Gasps filled the air. The pastor faltered, closing his Bible. The guests leaned forward, their eyes darting between Clarissa, Caleb, and Lena. Clarissa dropped her bouquet onto the floor, the petals scattering across the marble. She lifted her veil and spoke clearly. "This ceremony is over." She turned and walked out, her bridesmaids rushing behind her. The jazz band stopped playing. The cameras clicked furiously. Guests whispered, shouted, speculated. Caleb stood frozen, his face pale. He glanced at Lena, but she did not look at him. She remained seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap, her eyes steady on the stage as though she were merely a witness to truth finally spoken aloud. Martin leaned close, his voice low. "Caleb, you brought this on yourself." The hall broke into chaos. Some guests left immediately, shaking their heads. Others stayed, whispering about Caleb's downfall. Reporters scribbled notes, already drafting headlines. Lena rose slowly, smoothing her gown. Rachel stood beside her, fire in her eyes. Together they walked out of the hall with dignity, the crowd parting before them. Cameras flashed, capturing the image of the ex-wife who left not in shame, but in strength. Outside, the limousine door opened. Lena slid inside, Rachel following. As the car pulled away, Rachel let out a breath. "You did it." Lena shook her head gently. "No, I only showed up. The truth did the rest." Back inside the hall, Caleb sat on the edge of the stage, his hands trembling. The gold embroidery of his suit no longer gleamed. His friends avoided his eyes. His mother, seated in the second row, looked at him with bitter disappointment. For the first time in his life, Caleb felt the weight of silence pressing down on him. The applause he had always craved was gone. The respect he demanded had vanished, and in its place was the echo of his own pride, finally come to collect its debt. By the time Lena's limousine reached her small house on the edge of Fairview, the story had already begun to spread. Clips from the wedding flooded social media. A video of Clarissa throwing down her bouquet and storming out circulated with thousands of comments. Another clip, capturing Lena's graceful entrance in her yellow gown, was replayed again and again. Some commenters called her a queen. Others called her a miracle. Headlines shouted that the wedding of the year had ended in humiliation. Caleb Hartman, once the pride of Fairview, was now the subject of every whispered conversation. Inside her home, Lena removed her earrings and carefully folded her gown over the back of a chair. Rachel paced the living room, phone in hand, reading messages aloud. "Listen to this," she said.
Lena showed up, and the whole town froze. She never raised her voice, never shed a tear, and yet she won.
Lena shook her head.
I did not win anything.
Rachel stopped pacing.
What do you mean? Did you not see him?
Caleb's pride shattered in front of everyone.
That was not my goal,
Lena said softly. I only wanted to see myself standing in that hall without fear. That was enough. Rachel sighed, but let it go. She knew Lena's calm was not weakness. It was the strength that comes from surviving storms and still choosing peace. Across town, Caleb's mansion was not quiet. His mother's voice cut through the marble halls like a whip. You brought this on yourself. I warned you about pride. You humiliated me. You humiliated us all. Caleb sat at the dining table, his head in his hands. Guests had fled the reception, leaving untouched platters of food and unopened bottles of champagne. The band had packed their instruments in silence. Clarissa had vanished to New York, her last message cold and final. Do not call me again. His best man, Martin, tried to console him. Maybe you can fix this. Maybe if you explain... Explain what? Caleb muttered. That I blamed her without proof? That I threw her away? Martin hesitated. At least admit it. Caleb slammed his fist onto the table. Admit it to whom? The whole world already knows. Martin lowered his voice. You could start by admitting it to yourself. That night, Caleb wandered his empty mansion like a ghost. The gold-framed mirrors reflected his tired face. The crystal chandeliers flickered over empty chairs. He poured himself glass after glass of whiskey, but the burn did not erase the images replaying in his mind. Lena's calm eyes, Clarissa's furious voice, the silence of the crowd. When dawn broke, he finally collapsed on the sofa, his suit still wrinkled from the wedding that never was. Meanwhile, Lena rose early. The bakery could not pause for drama. She tied her apron, mixed her dough, and set the ovens glowing. Customers came in with stories about the wedding, but she only smiled and handed them their bread. Rachel wanted to shoo them away, but Lena shook her head. Let them talk. Words cannot harm me anymore. Yet even in her calm, a part of Lena wrestled with memories. She remembered the nights she begged God for a child. She remembered the cruel names Caleb had called her. She remembered packing her single suitcase, believing she was worthless. She had survived, but scars still lived inside her. One afternoon, as she wiped down the bakery counter, the bell above the door jingled. Daniel Price stepped in, holding a small bouquet of daisies. I thought you might need these today, he said. Lena blinked at him. Everyone else is bringing me gossip, and you bring me flowers? Daniel smiled. Gossip fades. Flowers last longer, even if only for a week. She took them, her hands brushing his. Thank you. He ordered a slice of pie, sat at a corner table, and simply kept her company while she worked. He did not ask about the wedding. He did not pry. His silence was the kindness she did not know she needed. That evening, Rachel teased her again. That man is patient. He is waiting for you to notice. Lena laughed softly. I have noticed. I am just not ready. Rachel leaned closer. Do not let the past chain you forever. Caleb already took 7 years. Do not give him more by closing your heart. Lena grew quiet. She wanted to argue, but Rachel's words settled deep. Back at Caleb's mansion, a different kind of storm brewed. His business partners began calling with hesitation in their voices. Some postponed meetings, others withdrew investments, citing instability. Employees whispered in the halls, avoiding his eyes. He felt their judgment even in silence. His mother avoided him now, her disappointment too heavy to conceal. She no longer praised his wealth. Instead, she reminded him of the wife he had cast aside, the woman she had once mocked, but now admitted had been pure gold. Caleb could not bear to hear it. In desperation, he scheduled a private appointment at a medical clinic. For years he had refused to be tested, insisting he was fine. But the weight of the truth gnawed at him now. The results came back 2 days later. The doctor looked at him gently, almost pityingly. Low sperm count, reduced motility, likely the result of an untreated infection years ago. Caleb stared at the paper in silence, his throat dry. So it was me all along. The doctor nodded. I recommend treatment. It will not be easy, but it is possible. Caleb left the clinic with the paper folded in his pocket like a sentence. Every step back to his mansion felt heavier. He had spent years building walls of pride, only to watch them crumble with a single page of medical truth. That evening, unable to bear the silence, he drove across town. He parked outside Lena's small house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He could see lights in the window, shadows moving as Rachel set the table for dinner. He sat there for nearly an hour, gathering courage. Finally, he stepped out, walked to the door, and knocked. Rachel opened it. The sight of him froze her. Her voice sharpened. "What are you doing here?" "I need to speak to Lena," he said quietly. Rachel's glare hardened. "You lost that right years ago." Lena's voice came from inside. "Rachel, let him in." Rachel turned, startled. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Lena said. "Let him in." Caleb stepped inside, his eyes dropping to the floor. He looked nothing like the proud man at the altar. His suit was wrinkled, his shoulders slumped, his face lined with exhaustion. He removed his cap and held it in his hands like a schoolboy before a principal. Lena stood calmly, her apron still dusted with flour. "What do you want, Caleb?" His voice broke. "To apologize." Caleb stood in the doorway like a man stripped of all armor. The confidence that once clung to him like a tailored suit was gone. His hands trembled slightly as he turned his cap over and over, his eyes avoiding Lena's steady gaze. Rachel crossed her arms, ready to shield her friend from whatever words might spill out of him. But Lena lifted her hand gently. "It is all right, Rachel. Sit down, Caleb." He lowered himself into a chair, shoulders hunched. The quiet of the room pressed down on him. On the wall hung a small wooden cross, and beneath it a calendar with flower smudges. It was a simple home. So unlike the mansion he had once dragged Lena through with his pride. Yet here he felt more judged than he ever had in a boardroom. Lena remained standing, her flower-streaked apron tied around her waist. She looked calm, but her eyes carried a firmness that unsettled him. "Speak," she said. Caleb swallowed hard. "I ruined everything. I judged you. I insulted you. I believed my pride over truth." Rachel scoffed. "That is the understatement of the century." He glanced at her, then back at Lena. "I never got tested. Not once. I thought it was you. I let my mother's words and my own arrogance blind me." Lena's expression did not change. And I went to a doctor this week." He paused, the silence so heavy it seemed the room itself held its breath. "The results show that I am the one with the problem. Low sperm count. It was never you, Lena. It was me." Rachel gasped, though she had long suspected it. She shook her head, muttering under her breath. "Years wasted because of your pride." Caleb's eyes filled with tears. "I know. I cannot undo it. I cannot take back the nights you cried yourself to sleep. I cannot erase the words I spoke to you. But I needed you to hear me say it. I was wrong." Lena leaned against the counter, her hands resting lightly on the wood. "For years, I carried your words like chains. I begged God to change me. I thought I was worthless. Do you know what that does to a person? He lowered his face into his hands. I do now. Rachel stepped forward, fire in her voice. You ruined her life. You stole her joy. You paraded your arrogance in front of the whole town while she rebuilt herself from ashes. Caleb's voice cracked. I am sorry. The word hung in the air, small but trembling with sincerity. For the first time, Lena saw him not as the man who had thrown her away, but as a broken soul grappling with truth. She exhaled slowly. I forgive you, Caleb. Rachel spun toward her. What? Lena repeated it clearly. I forgive you. Caleb lifted his head, tears streaking his face. Thank you. You do not know what that means. Do not mistake my forgiveness for an invitation, Lena said firmly. You are free of my bitterness, but my life is not yours to reclaim. He nodded quickly. I understand. The room grew quiet. Outside, a car passed by, its headlights sweeping briefly across the curtains. Inside, only the ticking clock marked the seconds. Finally, Lena untied her apron and sat across from him. What will you do now? I do not know, he admitted. My business is collapsing. Investors are leaving. Clarissa is gone. My reputation is dust. Rachel muttered, Perhaps that is justice. Caleb did not argue. He stared at his empty hands. I thought wealth would protect me. I thought pride would carry me. But I lost the one thing that mattered. Lena's voice softened slightly. Perhaps now you can learn what humility means. He looked at her. You are stronger than I ever realized. I was always strong, Lena said quietly. You just refused to see it. Silence returned. Caleb rose slowly, placing his cap back on his head. Thank you for listening. Thank you for forgiving me. As he turned to leave, Lena's voice stopped him. Caleb. He turned back, his eyes hopeful. She met his gaze with calm certainty. Get the treatment. Not for me, not for Clarissa, not even for the world. For yourself. Find peace within truth. His shoulders sagged with relief. I will. He left without another word, the door closing softly behind him. Rachel collapsed into a chair, shaking her head. You are unbelievable. After everything he did, you forgive him? Lena smiled faintly. Forgiveness is not for him. It is for me. I cannot heal if I hold on to bitterness. Rachel studied her, then slowly nodded. Perhaps you are right. Still, I would have thrown him out. That night, Lena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Memories of Caleb no longer cut as sharply. The wounds were still there, but something had shifted. She felt lighter, as if releasing him had finally unshackled her own heart. The following weeks brought new changes. Customers at the bakery multiplied after news of the wedding scandal spread. Some came for bread, others simply to catch a glimpse of the woman who had walked into a grand wedding with nothing but dignity. Lena handled it with grace, greeting each customer as if they were ordinary neighbors, not gossip seekers. Daniel Price remained a steady presence. He came every Friday, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with groceries to support the bakery. One afternoon, he asked if she would like to take a walk in the park. She hesitated, then agreed. The park was alive with children playing, dogs chasing frisbees, and couples strolling hand in hand. Lena inhaled deeply, the scent of cut grass and blooming roses filling her lungs. Daniel walked beside her, speaking of simple things: the weather, his cases at work, the way his late wife had loved gardening. After a long pause, he said quietly, Lena, I admire you. Not for what happened at the wedding, but for how you carry yourself. She looked at him, startled by the sincerity in his tone. You were broken, yet you stand. You were humiliated, yet you smile. That kind of strength is rare. Her throat tightened. Thank you. He smiled gently. I am not asking for anything now. I just wanted you to know how I see you. They walked in silence, but Lena's heart stirred with something unfamiliar. Hope. Back at his mansion, Caleb faced a different kind of silence. Reporters camped outside his gates. Former friends stopped answering his calls. His office felt emptier by the day as employees resigned. He sat alone in his grand study, staring at the medical report. For once, the man who had demanded respect from the world had no one left to demand from. He whispered to himself, "Who am I now?" The question echoed in the empty halls, unanswered. Spring arrived in Fairview with soft rains and blossoming dogwood trees. The town that had once murmured about Lena's broken marriage now spoke about her bakery. People came not only for bread and pies, but for the warmth she carried behind the counter. Mothers brought their children to taste her cookies. Workers bought her coffee on their way to early shifts, and old neighbors stopped by just to greet her. Rachel watched with pride as lines grew longer each morning. "You know," she said, "if this continues, you could open a second location." Lena laughed. "One bakery is enough for now. I do not want more than I can handle." But Rachel shook her head. "Do not limit yourself. You are stronger than you think." Strength, Lena had learned, did not always roar. Sometimes it whispered in quiet mornings when she rose to knead dough, or in the evenings when she locked the door and looked back at the shelves she had filled with her own hands. Daniel Price continued to appear at the bakery, his steady presence never demanding, always respectful. On one particularly rainy Friday, he entered carrying an umbrella that dripped onto the floor. He brushed water from his jacket and smiled. "The whole town is out here gossiping about you, Lena, and you are still here making cinnamon rolls." She grinned. "Gossip does not pay the bills. Cinnamon rolls do." He chuckled and ordered his usual pecan pie. But that day, instead of leaving after a few minutes, he lingered by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. Finally, he spoke. "Do you ever think about starting again?" Lena wiped her hands on her apron. "Starting again?" "Yes. With someone new." The question hung in the air like a held breath. Her heart tightened, memories of Caleb flashing before her eyes. But Daniel's voice was gentle, not pressing. "I am not asking for an answer today," he added quickly. "I just want you to know that if you ever consider it, I would like to be the one to walk beside you." She looked at him, her chest rising with a sigh. "I am scared, Daniel." He nodded. "So am I. But fear does not mean we cannot try." For the first time since her divorce, Lena allowed the thought to linger. The possibility of love without cruelty, affection without shame. That evening, Rachel teased her again. "He is waiting for you. He is patient, but he will not wait forever." Lena smiled faintly. "Maybe patience is exactly what I need." Meanwhile, Caleb's life unraveled further. Business deals collapsed. A major investor pulled out after the scandal spread beyond Fairview into financial circles. His company's stock slipped, and whispers grew that Caleb Hartman was finished. He spent long hours in his office staring at the medical report folded neatly in his drawer. His mother no longer scolded him. She barely spoke at all. The once proud matriarch who had pressured him into blaming Lena now lived with quiet regret. She avoided his eyes at the dinner table, perhaps because she saw too much of her own mistakes in them. One evening, Caleb wandered into the nursery he had decorated years ago. The walls were still painted blue, the crib still stood in the corner, untouched. Dust covered the toys he had once bought. He sat on the floor, his head in his hands, grief pressing against his chest like a weight he could not lift. For the first time, tears came without restraint. Across town, Lena and Rachel prepared for the town's spring festival. The bakery had been invited to set up a booth on Main Street. Lena baked through the night, filling trays with pies, muffins, and loaves. When morning came, Daniel arrived early to help them load everything into his truck. Rachel gave him a playful grin. "You are awfully committed for just a customer." Daniel smiled. "Maybe I want to be more than that." At the festival, crowds filled the street. Music played from a brass band, and children painted their faces with bright colors. Lena's booth quickly drew a line. People praised her baking, some remembering her from the scandal, but now celebrating her as a symbol of resilience. An elderly woman bought 2 pies and said, "Honey, you are proof that storms can make people bloom." Lena's eyes stung with tears as she thanked her. Later in the afternoon, when the crowd thinned, Daniel sat beside her. "You belong here, Lena." Not in Caleb's shadow, not in anyone's. You belong exactly where you are, and maybe, someday, beside someone who sees your worth. She looked at him, her heart trembling. Perhaps someday. Their conversation was interrupted by Rachel, who returned carrying lemonade. She raised her brows, noticing the way Daniel looked at Lena. "Someday might be closer than you think." That night, after the festival ended and the booths were packed away, Daniel walked Lena home. The air was cool, the stars clear above Fairview. At her doorstep, he paused. "Thank you for letting me help today." She smiled. "Thank you for being here." He hesitated, then said softly, "I do not want to rush you, but I need you to know. I care for you deeply." Her breath caught. She had expected it, yet hearing the words stirred something inside her she had buried long ago. She touched his hand gently. "I believe you." When he left, Lena sat by her window long into the night. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future not defined by pain, but by choice. In the weeks that followed, Daniel became a constant part of her life. They shared quiet dinners, long walks in the park, and evenings filled with laughter Rachel claimed she had not heard from Lena in years. Slowly, her fear gave way to trust. Then one morning, Lena woke feeling strange. The smell of coffee made her stomach twist, and her body felt weak. Rachel noticed first. "You are pale. Maybe you should see a doctor." Lena resisted, brushing it off as exhaustion. But when the sickness persisted for weeks, Daniel insisted. "Please, Lena, let us make sure everything is all right." Reluctantly, she agreed. At the clinic, she sat nervously as a nurse drew blood and ran tests. Hours felt like days until finally the doctor returned with a smile. "Congratulations, Lena. You are pregnant." Her heart stopped. Pregnant. The word echoed in her ears like a bell. Tears filled her eyes as she covered her mouth. Daniel jumped from his seat, stunned. "Are you serious?" The doctor nodded warmly. "Very serious. From the looks of it, about 6 weeks." Lena broke down in tears, her body shaking with joy and disbelief. All those years of being called barren, all the nights of praying, and now, pregnant. Daniel pulled her into his arms, his voice thick with emotion. "You are going to be a mother. We are going to be parents." In that moment, the chains of Caleb's accusations shattered completely. Lena's life, once marked by rejection, was now opening into new promise. The news of Lena's pregnancy spread quietly at first. Rachel cried louder than anyone, nearly spilling a pot of soup when Lena told her. She rushed forward and hugged her friend so tightly that Lena laughed through her tears. "My God," Rachel said. "Do you understand what this means? All the years of pain, all the lies Caleb poured into you, and now this." Daniel stood beside them, his hand resting protectively on Lena's shoulder. His face glowed with joy, but also with a solemn gratitude. He whispered, "This is grace, Lena. We have been given something beyond what we asked for.
In the following weeks, Lena's life filled with new rhythms. The bakery remained open, but Rachel insisted on doing more of the heavy lifting. Daniel arrived early each morning, carrying boxes, sweeping the floors, and reminding Lena to sit down whenever she pushed herself too far. Lena sometimes protested, but Daniel's gentle firmness always won. Doctor visits became a regular part of her schedule. Each time the heartbeat of her child pulsed through the monitor, Lena's eyes filled with tears. It was as if every cruel word Caleb had spoken was erased by that steady rhythm. One morning during a scan, the doctor paused and smiled with raised brows. Well, this is unexpected. Lena's heart leapt. Is something wrong? Not at all, the doctor said warmly. Everything looks healthy. But Lena, you are not carrying one child, you are carrying 3. Rachel gasped so loudly that the nurse laughed. 3? Triplets? Daniel grabbed Lena's hand, his face pale with shock. 3 babies? The doctor nodded, pointing to the screen where 3 tiny heartbeats flickered. It is unusual, but it happens. Congratulations. Lena covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. She whispered to herself, 3. Lord, you gave me more than I asked for. When they left the clinic, Daniel could hardly contain himself. He lifted Lena off the ground in the parking lot, spinning her carefully while Rachel clapped her hands and shouted. People passing by stopped to stare, smiling at the sight of pure joy spilling over onto the street. Meanwhile, across town, Caleb faced a different reality. His company bled money. Several board members resigned, leaving him to face angry investors alone. Newspaper articles labeled him the disgraced tycoon, the man whose arrogance had undone both his fortune and his reputation. At night, he scrolled through social media, tormenting himself with glimpses of Lena. Pictures of her bakery booth at the festival. Videos of her smiling with Rachel, whispers that she had found love again with the town's lawyer. And then, one evening, a photo appeared that nearly broke him. It showed Lena stepping out of the clinic with Daniel beside her, and Rachel carrying a folder of test results. Her hand rested protectively on her stomach, and her smile was brighter than the sun. The caption beneath read, "Rumors say Fairview's favorite baker has good news." Caleb dropped his phone onto the table, his heart pounding. Could it be true? Was Lena carrying a child now? The thought clawed at his chest until he could not breathe. He remembered the night he called her barren, the day he threw her out, the look in her eyes as she walked away. His mother entered the room and saw his pale face. "What is it?" she asked. He whispered hoarsely, "She is pregnant." His mother's lips pressed together. She warned him softly. "This is what pride costs, Caleb. You lost her, and now God has vindicated her." Caleb turned away, his shoulders shaking. For the first time, he admitted aloud what had haunted him for months. "I destroyed the only woman who ever truly loved me." Back in Lena's world, joy replaced sorrow. Rachel threw herself into preparing for the babies. She stitched blankets, painted a nursery, and ordered tiny clothes online. Daniel began renovating his house, building cribs and baby-proofing every corner. One evening, Lena sat in the half-finished nursery, her hand resting on her growing belly. Daniel knelt beside her, assembling a crib with clumsy fingers. He looked up, his face flushed with sweat. "I'm not sure I am good at this." She laughed softly. "You will learn. We both will." He set down the screwdriver and took her hand. "Lena, I never thought I would have a family again. After my wife passed, I thought my heart was closed forever. But now, with you, with these children, I feel alive." Her eyes filled with tears. "You have given me what I thought I lost forever, not just children. Hope." Rachel entered then, carrying a box of diapers. She stopped and grinned at the sight of the two of them holding hands. This nursery is going to be the happiest room in town. The months that followed were not easy. Pregnancy with triplets was exhausting. Lena often felt dizzy, her back ached, and she could hardly stand for long. Yet she faced it with resilience. Daniel never left her side, and Rachel became a second pair of hands whenever he was at work. The bakery slowed but did not stop. Loyal customers supported her, often insisting she rest while they carried boxes or swept the floors themselves. When the day of delivery finally came, the hospital was filled with anticipation. Doctors and nurses rushed about, preparing for the unusual birth. Lena clutched Daniel's hand so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Through hours of labor, she whispered prayers, her voice trembling but strong. And then, one by one, the cries of newborns filled the room. The first boy, then the second, then the third. 3 healthy sons. Tears streamed down Lena's face as nurses placed the babies in her arms. She kissed their tiny foreheads, her heart overflowing. "I am not barren," she whispered. "I was never barren." Daniel wept beside her, his hands covering his face before he leaned down to kiss her gently. "They are perfect. You are perfect." Rachel clapped her hands and laughed through her tears. This is the miracle we prayed for. Word of the triplets spread quickly. Neighbors brought casseroles and gifts. The town's newspaper published a headline, "From Scandal to Miracle, Lena's New Chapter." For once, Lena did not mind the attention. She had nothing to hide anymore. Far away, Caleb read the headline in his empty mansion. He stared at the photograph of Lena holding 3 newborns in her arms. Daniel beside her, Rachel smiling proudly in the background. Caleb dropped the paper and buried his face in his hands. His empire was gone, his bride had left, and the world no longer admired him. But the deepest wound came from seeing Lena whole, happy, and loved. Everything he once crushed and thought he had destroyed. The cries of newborns had changed the rhythm of Lena's home. Nights were no longer silent, but filled with tiny voices demanding warmth, milk, and comfort. Exhaustion settled into her bones, yet it was a sweet exhaustion, the kind that comes from love rather than sorrow. Daniel took shifts beside her, rocking one child while she fed another. Rachel moved through the house like a whirlwind, washing bottles, folding laundry, and singing lullabies off-key just to make the babies stop crying. Sometimes Lena sat in the rocking chair in the nursery, her 3 sons bundled in her arms, and marveled at how far she had come. She remembered the night she walked into the darkness with nothing but a suitcase and her tears. She remembered Caleb's harsh words, his scorn, his cold dismissal. And then she looked at the boys, 3 living answers to every cruel accusation. And she smiled. Fairview embraced her miracle. Neighbors dropped by with casseroles, hand-knitted blankets, and baskets of diapers. The bakery became a local legend, though it ran on limited hours. Customers lined up anyway, claiming the bread tasted sweeter now that it came from a mother's hands. Journalists occasionally asked for interviews, but Lena often declined. She wanted her sons to grow up in peace, not in headlines. One evening, Daniel returned from work to find Lena sitting on the porch, the babies sleeping soundly inside. The sun had set, leaving streaks of pink and gold across the sky. He sat beside her, handing her a cup of tea. "You are glowing," he said softly. She smiled. "I am tired." He laughed. "Tired, yes, but also at peace." She leaned against his shoulder. "Peace was once something I begged for. Now it is here, in this house, in these children, in you." He kissed the top of her head. "And it will stay here, as long as we guard it together." Meanwhile, Caleb's mansion grew colder each day. Dust gathered on furniture that had once sparkled.
The nursery remained untouched, a bitter reminder of dreams that never came true. He spent hours staring out the window, his empire in ruins, his phone silent, his name now spoken with pity or scorn. His mother came to visit one afternoon. She walked slowly into the study where he sat with a glass of whiskey. Her voice, once sharp, was weary now. "Caleb," she said, "we were wrong. I pressured you. I mocked her. I told you lies that became your truth. And together we destroyed something beautiful." Caleb did not look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on the empty glass. "I know," he whispered. She placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "You must forgive yourself, Caleb, or you will die with bitterness." He laughed bitterly. "Forgive myself? I ruined everything." She sighed. "Then at least learn. Learn that pride will always destroy what love tries to build." When she left, the house felt emptier than ever. Caleb wandered to the front door and found an envelope on the mat. He picked it up and saw Lena's handwriting. Inside was a short note. "Caleb, I do not hate you. I do not carry bitterness anymore. I forgave you because I wanted to be free. You must find your own freedom now. Do not let pride chain you again. Live honestly. Live humbly. Lena." He sank into a chair, the letter shaking in his hands. Tears blurred the words. For a long time, he sat in silence, whispering her name, knowing she would never return. Back at Lena's home, life blossomed. Daniel expanded the bakery into a cafe so that Lena could work fewer hours while raising the children. Rachel managed the books, proudly calling herself the aunt of 3 boys. The house rang with laughter, with the babble of babies, with the sound of pots clattering as meals were shared around the table. One Sunday afternoon, when the children were a few months old, the family gathered in the park. Daniel spread a blanket on the grass. Rachel chased butterflies with the boys in her arms, and Lena leaned back, watching them all. People passing by stopped to smile. Some whispered, "That is Lena, the woman who turned sorrow into strength." Lena did not mind. For once, she was not embarrassed by the eyes upon her. She was not defined by Caleb's cruelty or the whispers of the past. She was defined by the love surrounding her, the family she had built, the peace she carried. As the sun dipped lower, Daniel took her hand. "I have been waiting for the right moment," he said. She turned to him, curious. "For what?" He reached into his pocket and drew out a small velvet box. Her breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. "Lena, I have loved you from the moment I saw your strength. Not the strength of pride, but the quiet strength of grace. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes as she nodded, unable to speak. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, and Rachel clapped so loudly that nearby picnickers laughed. The boys gurgled as if they too were celebrating. That night Lena lay in bed, her sons asleep in their cribs, the ring warm on her hand. She whispered a prayer of gratitude. For Rachel, who never left her side. For Daniel, who restored her joy. For her children, who silenced every cruel word with their very existence. And even for Caleb, whose betrayal had pushed her toward the life she now cherished. Across town, Caleb sat in his darkened study, the letter from Lena resting on his desk. He whispered to the empty room, "I destroyed love, but she found it again." He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of loneliness press down on him. Perhaps one day he would change, perhaps not. But the woman he had once called barren was now overflowing with life, and nothing could take that truth away. The years ahead promised trials and challenges, as all lives do. But Lena knew she would face them with peace in her heart. No longer broken, no longer chained by lies, she had stepped into freedom.
And every time she rocked her sons to sleep, every time Daniel kissed her goodnight, every time Rachel laughed loudly in the kitchen, Lena remembered the vow she had made to herself on the night she walked into the darkness with nothing. She had promised that her story would not end in despair. She was right. Her story had only begun.